My name is Ilan Haimoff, and I'm a partner at GHJ, where I lead the Profit Participation Services Group. I wanted to thank you for joining us today for our quarterly discussion on the state of the film and television industry from a film finance standpoint as well as a legal standpoint. Here with me today is Chris Spicer and Darian Singer, who have been doing this with me a couple of times. This is our third time together. Chris is the head of the entertainment and media practice at the law firm of Akin Gump, and Darian is the managing director in JP Morgan's Entertainment Industry Group. I'd like to welcome you both again.
Thanks, Ilan.
So since the last time we spoke, which was back in November of 2021, lots has been going on. I mean, we had a COVID surge, and now it's behind us. We have geopolitical issues in Europe that all of us are trying to figure out how it impacts the industry and beyond, as well as the continued concern with inflation. And so on the film and television front, we're also seeing continued competition. In fact, it's becoming more and more crowded in the streaming space, and still changes are going on in our industry while the streaming is picking up across all the different platforms. And at the same time, we are seeing, as people are coming out more and more to the theaters, we are seeing I would say, back to the theaters surge, especially with the last couple of titles that sort of beat all kinds of records. So with all of this, as you take a look from your client's perspective, what trends do you see, in our industry from both a legal and then finance standpoint? And I'll have Darian start, and then Chris will follow.
Sure. Thanks, Ilan, for having us. I think, from the standpoint of where things are, I agree. We're seeing a surge at the box office for a certain type of content. I am an optimist, and I do think that the box office will remain a key piece of sort of the finance puzzle on a go forward. But I do think we have a question as to whether there will be certain limitations on the type of content that just financially makes sense to appear at movie theaters. So I think that will be an ongoing question. That's a trend that is yet to play out, but it's something that's front of mind, I think, for everyone. In addition to that, and maybe parlaying off that, it's a question of, is this the point at which we get sort of peak saturation of streaming services? Are we going to see winners and losers? And the question that could come from that of is there ever too much content? And so, we've been talking about that for years. COVID was a little bit of a reset. We are seeing, hopefully a bit of normalization, but I don't know if we know what the new normal looks like. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those things play out.
Yeah, and I agree from a legal perspective, kind of echo everything Darian said. And what we're kind of seeing is, there has kind of been a settling down, kind of geopolitical events in Europe the last couple of weeks aside, of productions. And it's kind of the issue is everyone, producers, there's a push-pull between kind of financiers and producers, both of whom we all represent and deal with, where producers are kind of at the point where they're now, hey, I produced 4 films during COVID. This is super easy now. It's old hat for me. Here's our process. Here's our protocols. Here's how our sets are safer. And when you're talking about financiers and insurance companies and other people in the ecosystem that are involved in that process, they're kind of at the point where that's all great, but hey, we still live in this world where, we've had 2 surges of this, and we still need to have a certain amount of COVID contingency or of COVID coverage or other type of risk coverage. And it's kind of one of these where it's great in the sense that instead of this sort of, hey, we can't finance your movie, good luck, go spend $15 million to get your movie through principal photography, and then maybe we can talk to you. And again, at least in the independent space, a lot of people don't have that to hey, how much are we going to require you to do? What type of protocols are we going to require you to have? So the risk element is still there because, again, I think everyone would agree kind of producers are ready to kind of take more of that risk. And then again, just because, I do represent a lot of financiers and banks, we kind of are always like, look, let's pump the brakes for a minute. We still need to make sure we do this and that and the other thing to make sure we're covered. But a lot of the legal kind of focus and framework has been on that. And the conversations move from this, especially when you talk to people when Omicron hit, it was kind of this, hands in the air, like we just got through Delta, I've been dealing with COVID for 18 months, and now we've got this other wave of Omicron, to where kind of, hey, most people at least are vaxxed. Almost all of the films and TV shows that we're doing has, you know, a high number of that, adequate testing, the testing protocols are good, and that's a really, really positive thing.
Thank you both. And it sounds to me that maybe the way to best describe what you both said is we're cautiously optimistic as we move, into 2022. But with that in mind, what key positive change or trend do you each see by the end of 2022?
I mean, Darian, you want me to go first on this one? So
Sure, go for it.
yeah, so I think sort of echoing, and it's kind of, what I have, mine's not, it's not like super exciting or anything, but there is kind of just like a settling down and a return to normalcy that I've seen that I think actually is a much needed kind of relief for our industry. And it's kind of one of those where even from like kind of attending some in-person festivals, and I think everyone now, has maybe been to a screening or two in person of a film that wasn't happening for a whole period of time. And I think that's just been like a nice sort of refreshing, hey, we can get back to having some interpersonal interactions, and EFM, even though that happened not to be in person, I think there were some really solid and great sales that came out of EFM that hadn't been at a lot of markets for a while. Even foreign buyers know that there's kind of product coming available again, and I think that kind of return to normalcy will be good for our business as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, taking it in a slightly different direction, I agree with that entirely. I do think also, it's going to require creative thinking in a way that's a bit more a good intellectual exercise for all of us, both in terms of content production, distribution for sure, but even things that go beyond that. The economics of the industry have changed, right? And so you start to think about, if you're talent, let's say, do you have to think about a different way to generate revenue, because you're not going to necessarily always get a shot at the box office upside you may have gotten historically. And so it's going to require all of us to think about things that are, a little bit off the run, right? Like, are our clients going to be thinking about other lines of businesses, other ways to exploit their IP, other ways to leverage their brand? And that's just going to create, maybe new business opportunities, maybe things that only tangentially tie into content. And it should just make for an interesting year ahead, I think.
Yeah, well said, both of you. And I think for me, just to close that question is, I am really looking forward to incredible content that's going to come in different forms. It's going to be in the theaters, it's going to be on television, on streaming. A lot is being produced right now, and I think it's catching up from all the slowdown we had over the last couple of years. So hopefully we'll see all of that as the year goes by. But anyway, thank you both, Darian and Chris, for the time and sharing your thoughts and comments. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.